The closest thing Colorado is seeing to a Trump trial started today. Attorneys for the man who tried to overthrow an election says keeping him off a future ballot, well, that wouldn't be legal.
This is election interference.
Investigators identify the 20-year-old found dead in an amusement park, armed with guns and bombs. Couple of cents from every joint smoked in Denver goes to tax revenue. City just hit $500 million. Dang, that's a lot of smoke. And he's 98 years old, served in World War II, Korea, Vietnam. His family, friends, and hospice caretakers don't want to miss one last opportunity to say thank you.
It was my pleasure to serve.
All that tonight on Next. The trial on whether to kick former President Donald Trump off the ballot in Colorado began today. If Trump loses, it'll immediately be appealed, eventually to the U.S. Supreme Court. If he wins, the arguments his attorneys are making could come back to haunt Colorado's Republican Party, which is in pretty spooky shape anyway. Here's politics guy Marshall Zellinger.
In a way, it's like watching the January 6th committee all over again.
That is Officer Hodges, who you'll hear from shortly.
Instead of a congressional hearing room in the U.S. Capitol, January 6th is on trial in a Denver courtroom.
We ask after this hearing that this court find Trump is an ineligible candidate.
Eric Olson is one of the attorneys representing 6 Colorado voters, 4 Republican, 2 unaffiliated, trying to keep Trump off the presidential ballot in Colorado next year using Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, ratified 155 years ago, that if you engage in an insurrection after having sworn an oath to uphold the Constitution, you shall not hold any office, which would include being a candidate for a future office.
At the time of passage, 1868, engaging in insurrection included words of incitement or specific words of encouragement. That's what Trump did here.
Using Trump's own words and testimony from 2 officers injured at the Capitol on January 6th, the case began today by trying to prove to a court that Trump engaged in insurrection, thus allowing him to be disqualified from running for office.
This is their effort to get a court to endorse the January 6th report. That's what it comes down to.
Former Republican Colorado Secretary of State Scott Gessler is one of Trump's attorneys who argued that the January 6th report was produced to get a desired outcome and should be seen as one-sided. He also argued that voters should not be limited on who appears on their ballot.
This lawsuit is anti-democratic. It looks to extinguish the opportunity for millions of Colorado Republicans and unaffiliated voters to be able to choose and vote for the presidential candidate they want.
But that argument is a bit at odds with the recent actions of the Colorado GOP. Chairman Dave Williams has twice tried and failed to change the party rules to limit who can vote in choosing Republican candidates. This case is about who can be a candidate.
This court should not interfere with that fundamental value, that rule of democracy. It's the people who get to decide.
The bulk of this case will be a history lesson on the 14th Amendment. What was intended in 1868, how has it been used, and should it be used that way now? Multiprong Kyle, was Trump responsible for engaging in insurrection, number one?
Yeah.
And then if the answer is yes to that, does it apply in the way the 14th Amendment should be interpreted?
Why here? Why are we doing this here?
Yeah, I asked that question when we covered this a couple months ago, why not Georgia, why not Pennsylvania?
Yeah.
Why? Because what you're seeing right now, it's already, the trial has begun. Because it's fast in Colorado. You can get it into the district court right away. You can get it heard before the deadlines. There's a deadline of January 5th before Colorado's ballot has to be certified. So you need a decision by then to know whether or not you can print Trump's name on the ballot.
So even if they think that they're going to take an L from a Democrat-appointed judge and lose at the appeals level, a fast L is good because it gets you to the Supreme Court.
Right, but I don't know the last case that has ever moved that swiftly from, district court to the Supreme Court.
All right, Marshall, thank you. Trump's attorneys tried to get this judge off the case at the last minute. They claim she's biased because before she was a judge, she gave $100 to a political group dedicated to defeating Republican candidates tied to the January 6th attack. The Trump team's motion filed over the weekend says that Judge Sarah Wallace donated $100 to the Colorado Turnout Project last year. The Turnout Project's website describes January 6th as a violent insurrection, says the group is dedicated to flipping Colorado's Republican congressional seats. They've got a specific focus on Representative Lauren Boebert. Judge Wallace does not dispute that she made the $100 contribution. She says that she does not remember making it.
I have formed no opinion whether the events of January 6th constituted an insurrection or whether intervener Trump engaged in an insurrection, or for that matter, any of the issues that need to be cited in this hearing. If I did, I would recuse myself.
So judges and judicial candidates are barred from making political contributions under Colorado law. Wallace was a private attorney at the time of this contribution. Before being appointed by Governor Polis, she had a history of donating to Democratic candidates that included Secretary of State Jenna Griswold, who was one of the co-defendants in this case. The criminal cases against some Coloradans who breached the Capitol on January 6 are moving along at a fast clip this month. In the past 2 weeks, 3 defendants have been in court. Latest is Jacob Clark of Colorado Springs. He was sentenced last Friday to 33 months in prison. Prosecutors say Clark had bragged about being one of the first rioters into the Capitol. He texted friends that he helped break down the door. Prosecutors say once he was in there, he hit an officer with a 2x4. He was found guilty earlier this year on 5 misdemeanors, 1 felony. Earlier this month, 2 Coloradans pleaded guilty in separate cases related to the insurrection. A guy from Colorado Springs who tried to push past officers and get into the Capitol, and a man from Telluride who was charged with punching a Capitol officer in the face. It certainly seems like it could have been a horrific mass shooting in the making. Investigators say the man who brought guns and bombs into an amusement park on the western slope killed himself instead. 20-year-old named Diego Barajas Medina was found dead inside Glennwood Caverns Adventure Park. Scrawled on the bathroom wall beside him, "I am not a killer. I just wanted to get into the caves." Investigators say Barajas Medina, who's from Carbondale, was wearing body armor, had a ballistic helmet. He had several ghost guns, ammo, pipe bombs. The Garfield County Sheriff says Barajas Medina did not have a criminal history and was, quote, completely under the radar. A veto threat by Governor Jared Polis has convinced his fellow Democrats to give up on a bill to allow supervised drug injection sites. Only Denver has ever said that it wants one, and the bill would have been tailored to just Denver. But Governor Polis made clear he would stop it. So today, a legislative committee decided not to put that bill before the full legislature next year. Supervised injection sites are places for people who use drugs to do so under medical supervision. Denver City Council asked the state for permission to do this a couple of years ago. Current mayor Mike Johnston is opposed to the idea. Now, a legislator could still draft their own version of a supervised injection site bill, but that veto threat's still hanging out there. Similar bill failed for similar reasons last year. So every time somebody lights up a joint in Denver, the city gets a couple cents in tax revenue. And it turns out people have been busy. The city just hit $500 million in cannabis revenue. Our Mark Salinger shows us where the money's going.
Sean, your total is $59.74.
The day was January 1st, 2014. The first recreational marijuana sold in the U.S., right here in Colorado.
We did it.
We didn't know it then, but this was the beginning of a rush of green, both in dollars and weed.
And I am so proud of Colorado for being first in the country, first in the world.
Almost 10 years since the cameras crowded the first sale in history.
And so a lot of people ask us, so where did the tax money go?
Denver just hit $500 million in tax revenue from marijuana sales.
$500 million is a lot of money.
Eric Escudero is with Denver's Department of Excise and Licenses, which regulates the marijuana industry in the city. Last year, the city brought in $54.8 million in local sales stats, state sales tax, and licensing fees. That may seem like a lot until you realize that's down more than $17 million from the year before.
We do know that we may have hit the peak as far as what marijuana sales will look like.
This year, they project to bring in only $31.9 million. So where does that money go? The biggest percentage is allocated for homelessness and housing. Nearly $9 million of that money this year will go towards affordable housing in a city that's become increasingly unaffordable. Another $8 million is put towards operating the homeless shelter on 48th Street. Then the rest is split up between marijuana regulation and education, along with small business investment and money put towards the city's general fund.
You think about the potholes on the road, those things still come out of the general fund, and marijuana tax dollars contribute to it.
Pot for potholes, as the PR campaign goes. It's been 10 years since Colorado first got high legally, and the money keeps rolling in.
We got some legal weed.
When anyone buys anything at a dispensary, they're paying state and local sales tax. The state has their own allocation for where all that money goes, and then they send some back to individual cities. That fund is where you see things like school construction. When people smoke less weed, Kyle, the state gets less money.
Once upon a time, Mark Salinger, I thought that there was nothing that Coloradans love more than the Denver Broncos and the mountains. And then came March 23, 2020, when then Mayor Hancock briefly attempted to close booze shops and pot shops, and the city lost its collective mind.
If you thought the pandemic sent everyone home and no one was smoking weed, you are wrong. The city of Denver brought in about $70 or so million in taxes in 2020 and 2021. Compare that to this year, 31.9, what's projected. That's a lot of weed.
Yeah, work from home, my posterior. We know what everybody
they're working.
was doing from home. Mark, thank you. So we try and direct your Word of Thanks microgiving projects to reach every corner of Colorado. The $10,000 plus that you just raised for Mountain Roots Food Project is actually our first Word of Thanks microgiving campaign specifically for Gunnison County. That nonprofit fights hunger by building a network of farmers and ranchers around the area. They buy food locally and then feed people in their community. If you know of a nonprofit doing great work in your corner of Colorado, let me know. I read each and every suggestion that comes to next@9news.com.
You're able to give something to them that they didn't receive.
There are not too many of these Americans left to thank in person. He served in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. And Denver might as well have a vacancy sign hanging on the whole downtown. A new report outlines just how many offices are still empty. Progressives on Denver City Council are putting pressure on new Mayor Mike Johnston tonight to dedicate more of the city budget to their priorities. Mayor's already said no once. Bunch of budget amendments from City Councilwomen Sarah Parody and Chantel Lewis. They're pushing to reallocate police funding to create an Office of Neighborhood Safety. They've also brought amendments to invest more money in pedestrian safety, especially around schools. Their big ask, which has the support of several other city councilors, is nearly $15 in additional funding for eviction prevention. The mayor has already said no to that, said it cuts too deeply into city reserves. The mayor's offering $15 million for that program. They want to double it. It would take a majority on city council to overrule him. Johnson's budget includes more than $45 million to revitalize downtown. Steep bill for a big project because downtown vacancies have hit their highest point in decades. Our partners at Business Den were first to report on the report from CBRE. It's a real estate services firm that provides quarterly estimates of where things are with real estate in Denver. Their latest report says a third of the downtown office space, 30%, was either vacant or being vacated in the last quarter. Vacancies have been trending up since the pandemic hit 20% 2 years ago. CBRE says it is the first time that downtown has been 30% vacant since the 1990s. Coming out of a snowy weekend, Kathy Sabins here with weather.
You know what? We had the first snowstorm of the season for Denver, and it is long gone. We're left with clear skies, light winds, and another cold night, but not as cold as last night. We started this morning at DIA with a low of 11, warm compared to some of the temperatures over the higher terrain this morning. Headlines include another cold night, but a slow warming trend for much of the upcoming week. Temperatures will go above average, and a not so scary Halloween forecast. Up across the Continental Divide, the sun has set, still a lot of snow cover. Temperatures in the mountains today in the 30s. 45 for Denver, far below the average of 60, but we will get there. But temperatures 14 degrees warmer than this time yesterday. So trending in the right direction. Winds coming in out of the south as high pressure rebuilds over the area. Our storm is tracking off to the east. We'll be tracking a few high and mid-layer clouds that come into western Colorado and the higher terrain as we move into the middle part of the week, but nothing coming out of those clouds. So we look mild and dry between now and Friday. And so for the evening, coming down out of the 40s into the lower 30s by 10 o'clock tonight. Extended forecast shows upper 40s for Halloween, mid-50s for Wednesday, a string of 60-degree temperatures heading into the weekend. Daylight saving time ends on Saturday night, Sunday morning. Don't forget to set those clocks back 1 hour. And for Halloween, not bad. As the kids head out around 6 or 7 o'clock, temperatures in the 40s with fair skies. Coming back in, clear and cool with a temperature of 38 degrees.
So I officially retired from the Air Force in 1968.
Decades in, more decades out. As the 98-year-old's days wane, those close to him gather to say thanks. America asks a lot of its service members, and the ask was particularly steep for one part of one generation of the right age at the right time to serve, if willing, in World War II and Korea and Vietnam. There are few of those veterans around to thank these days, so we figured you might like to see it happen at a hospice center in Jefferson County.
Bill is one of the men and women in this country who said yes when their country asked them to serve. And in Bill's case, he was involved in 3 wars. I enlisted in the aviation cadet program when I was still in high school. And he went to basic training.
We are part of a program called We Honor Veterans. It's an organization that really focuses the need for end-of-life care for veterans.
Graduated as a second lieutenant pilot in March of 1945.
So today we were honoring a service member that not only served in 1 war, but served in 3 separate wars, World War II, Korea, and Vietnam.
There's a high part of our American flag that has flown over the United States of America. I flew 20 different types of aircraft in the Air Force, 2 of which were capable of breaking the sound barrier. This says, we honor veterans. Flew 52 combat night sortie attack missions during the Korean War. So that's the only war I got shot at in. We pay special tribute to you for your military service to America. I used to fly a lot of combat support missions, flying in and out of Korea and Vietnam.
There's not a whole lot of words. It's just what you feel in your heart, and knowing that you're able to give something to them that they didn't receive.
Present arms. Say, welcome home! It shows me that all of the citizens that I know of close relation have always treated me well and appreciated my service, and I want to return the same to them. It was my pleasure to serve.
Bill O'Neill retired after 25 years with the Air Force, then worked 15 years in service of his community with Jefferson County. We Honor Veterans is a program created by the VA in partnership with hospice centers. Finish up with your feedback. Happy belated birthday to Marissa, bringing it in. We'll be right back. A riveting slow-speed chase is the most Colorado thing we saw today. Cow on the lamb, not a lamb on the cow, cow on the lamb, spotted by Melissa and Parker. Deputies were content to just kind of follow it along as it moseyed onto a park. Then they convinced it to get back in its trail. Just another day working the open range if you're with the sheriff's office. If you see something that feels like Colorado to you, email it to us next at 9news.com. Oh, the feedback tonight. Frank is hot about this judge in the Trump case who made the $100 donation to the Democratic group. Frank says judge should absolutely recuse herself. Absolutely, all caps. This via text. You blanking communists in Colorado trying to get Trump off the ballot. Shame on you, you globalist pigs. That tracks. Diane writes, don't let the naysayers get you. You're the reason I watch next. Diane, you want to talk to that last one? The man who's very angry about the globalist pigs? Nah, it's probably best to leave it be, right? We'll see you next time.